everybody, welcome back to Same Same But Different. I'm Amira and today I am joined with Nour. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey Amira, I'm doing well, thanks. How about you?
I'm great. I'm rocking my global nomad belonging beyond borders sweater, and you're wearing one of your pieces too.
Yes, I'm gonna move my hair. So it says Citizen of the World, so it's one of the jumpers as well. And they are literally the coziest things to live in all day.
I completely agree. Yes, they really, really are.
You look fabulous in yours, so it's great to see you rocking.
Thank you, and we're matching black and white. It's really, it's very nice.
So my name is Nour, also known as the Global Nomad on Instagram, and I was born in Beijing in China. However, I have Egyptian parents. So I never actually grew up in Egypt, although I've been there many times. And then I grew up in Macau for the first 8 years of my life, moved to New Zealand, then to Bahrain, then back to New Zealand for university. And then I went to London for a couple of years just to get some work experience. And then I went back to Bahrain, worked there for a few years. And now I'm here in the UK. So I've had quite a few different places where I've lived, but I suppose it's, it comes with being a TCK. That's the kind of long-winded introduction about myself.
Great.
So yeah, I'm here with my husband and my kitten.
We're still waiting for that kitten to wake up. Although maybe it's best that she sleeps for the time being.
Yeah. So she doesn't bite on our laptop cords and chargers. Let's see.
Okay. I have so many questions, but I think we could start with the concept TCK, which of course stands for Third Culture Kid. So Nour, how would you explain to, maybe there are some people who have never heard this term before or who aren't completely sure what it means. How would you, in your own words, explain what a third culture kid is?
I would just describe it as a third culture kid being somebody who has grown up in cultures that are different to that of their parents, as well as the environments that their parents have also come from. So you're actually creating a new culture. So you can almost think of it as though you've accompanied your parents into a new environment through your upbringing, because I think there's like a very famous Venn diagram that almost, well, it kind of describes it really nicely, actually, what a third culture kid, where you've got like your parents' culture, the host culture, and then the culture in which you, all the kind of different mixes of cultures that you are then exposed to as a child, and then you've got yourself right in the middle. So you've actually created a third culture. It's not necessarily that you have lived in maybe another country that your parents aren't from. It's actually a combination of all of those things.
Yeah, exactly, because I'm sure there might be some people who think it is exactly that it's like mom's culture, dad's culture. So if you live in a third one, that is what a third culture kid is. But it is not that. It is, like you say, it's you kind of creating your own culture. And another thing, you don't have to be a kid. So it can be like an adult TCK. It has no age limitations there.
Definitely, yeah. And I think what you've touched on there is really key, because you are a third culture kid because of the formative or childhood developmental years that you were exposed to that country or culture in. Because obviously as adults, I think the term expat is probably used a lot more often, where you're an adult and you move across, you move overseas and you live in a different country, whereas third culture kid, you can still be an adult but have had that experience as a kid.
So for you personally, what is your native language, or did you grow up speaking several languages?
So this is a little bit of a sensitive point for myself, because I feel like I just don't have a mother tongue. Like, I speak English, that's the language that I express myself in and think in, and I would say it's my dominant language. But even then, I have moments where I'll say something wrong or mispronounce something, or use the wrong phrases. So, and I think that also comes with just not necessarily having like one place where I've lived. But I did grow up learning Mandarin as a child. And then that quickly fizzled away when I'd moved away into New Zealand. Like, if you're not using the language, it's very easy to forget it and not practice. And then obviously my parents spoke to us in Arabic, but because we were learning English in school, it became very difficult for them to speak to us, or at least for us to speak to them back in Arabic, because we got so used to speaking English and feeling the most confident in English that it ended up being them speaking to us in Arabic and then us responding in English. So And I think that's something that many TCKs might identify with as well. In the Egyptian culture as well, like because it's such a strong culture, and people are also very like proud of the fact that like you should speak Arabic because you are of an Arab origin. That was something that I always felt quite guilty about growing up. Like when people talk to me and say, "Well, you're Egyptian, why don't you speak Arabic?" And it would always make me feel like this sense of imposter syndrome and just feeling a bit like, oh, I don't know how to respond to this. I don't want people to think that I'm better than them because I don't speak the language and I think of myself as like a foreigner. Like I'd love to feel like I can speak this native language, but I just never developed that. So I used to get quite defensive, I think, but I've learned to overcome that a little bit now.
Sure, I feel exactly the same, and I feel like that this piece about the whole situation is only very recent, because also growing up, I didn't feel defensive. I just felt very like ashamed in a way when some of the Arab kids would be like, "But your name is Amira. Why do you call yourself Amira?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not good enough I'm not Arab enough." And then I'd go to Finland and I would say as well, "My name is Amira." And they'd be like, "But that's not a Finnish name." And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm not Finnish enough." And then you kind of end up just not knowing what you are and not being enough of anything. And
Absolutely.
I think back then it was tough, and it took a long time to kind of understand that there's nothing wrong with me as a person, but it comes with the territory.
100%. I think that's so true. And to be able to acknowledge that it's been a recent thing as well is quite helpful, because it takes a while to understand what does it mean to be a TCK. Like it only really gave me that aha moment when I came across the term. It was actually this like really reassuring feeling that, oh, there's a name for this, and actually I can relate to others. It's not just me and my sisters and my brother's journey that we've felt like these aliens all our lives. It's actually, there's a whole community out there of us, and that's in itself really reassuring. So it's no wonder it's a recent like kind of almost like a revelation or realization that we've had. There is sort of this like conversation around the TCK community about how it is quite a difficult upbringing in many ways, and it absolutely is. So I think if we start with sort of the challenges, I think, or the cons, it's probably just this sense of like rootlessness, never really feeling like you're part of the rest of the group, whether it's a friendship group or whatever country that you're living in. You always kind of feel like you stand out. And maybe for people who are a little more introverted like myself, we would like to kind of blend in and not be asked questions about ourselves. And we don't like to really be the topic of conversation or the kind of new thing in the group. So I guess also just never really fitting in, not just physically, but you're always having to relearn like the things that are of that culture. So maybe things like within media, or like phrases that you might not understand what they imply or mean, or even jokes. Like you're just always this new person, and you're never like one of the gang, and that can be really difficult as a child. But there are, of course, positives to being a third culture kid, and I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to promote on the Global Nomad page, is really changing that conversation to be more focused on, yes, it has been a challenging upbringing, and some people don't actually acknowledge that it's a challenging upbringing. Some people think that, oh, you guys are just spoiled, well-traveled kids that just want to find an excuse to feel sorry for yourselves. And I've come across that in some ways, but actually there is so much that we can bring to the table, such as this feeling of a world view. We're able to look at things on a world scale, on a global scale. We're not limited to just the confines of one country. I think that in itself brings with it, less prejudice. We're not fearful of other cultures. We're not going to jump to conclusions or necessarily kind of have this boundary between us and others. Definitely has its baggage, but I think I'm very grateful that I've had an upbringing like this as well, because it's opened my eyes to things that I don't think I would have been aware of if I hadn't had this experience. It's brought more positives than negatives, but the negatives are still things that I'm still learning to cope with, I think. So it's hard to feel that way sometimes. There are days where you think, oh, why couldn't I just have been from one place and my family lived down the road from me and everything would be easy. I feel like it's the way the world's going. I feel like we
Mm-hmm.
are becoming a globalized society, I think third culture kids are only going to be more and more common and grow more and more. And that's kind of the direction that we're headed, a sort of more boundaryless
That's
society, I think.
no matter how many times I am at the airport saying goodbye, knowing that I have to leave, like packing my suitcase in tears, knowing that it is also my choice to be living where I'm living, but it just never gets easier. And like just this last time leaving Finland again after Christmas, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm always crying for some place and missing a place. And it's always goodbyes. Like it never gets easier and you never kind of get used to it.
Yeah, it's a constant yearning and longing for
Yeah.
something. And we also just need to be a bit realistic. Like, yes, we might have great memories and that's a great thing, but it didn't mean that everything was perfect at that point. It also carried its challenges. It's just that I think our minds are so they're so easily like led to remember the good bits of things and not
Yes.
necessarily the
Mhm.
negatives, when we think of these memories.
Because one of the things that I remember going through for such a long time growing up was feeling that if I kind of loved one of my cultures, it meant I had to dislike the other one. Like I felt that I could never have both. It had to be either or. And I kind of went back and forth. Like there were times I was like, oh, I feel so connected to the Finnish culture. So I have to be against the Egyptian one because, can't be both. And vice versa. And it wasn't until university when I started my master's in intercultural communication, I started reading up on these issues and I saw that this is an actual thing. And I was like, wow, okay, well, all these feelings that I've been having my whole life, they kind of make much more sense now and make me feel less of like a weirdo or somebody with just like issues. And that kind of brought some clarity into my life. So I don't know if you've experienced anything similar.
I just maybe remember things like as a child, feeling a little bit embarrassed when my parents would speak Arabic when I was in New Zealand, for example,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't want to feel more different than I already was. And I felt that if my friends heard Arabic around the house, they'd be like, oh God, like this weird
Mm-hmm.
family, the weird language. Like I remember feeling quite self-conscious about that. Even like calling my parents mama and baba and not mom and dad, like,
Right.
little things like that, having to shy away from. I didn't grow up in a school, or at least for those kind of primary school years, which is also when you're very insecure and you just want to have a group of friends that accept you for who you are.
Yeah.
I think like that primary school age was very difficult for me because I not only had a different accent to everybody else, I felt like I had to change that to speak English with other people, but change it slightly to a more New Zealand sounding accent, or even like change the words that I would use to be able to be better understood.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think like, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's not like a negative thing. It's just feeling like I couldn't be myself comfortably and be confident about my difference because I'd always kind of be cast out because of it. Other things like just being darker haired, which obviously meant that you have darker hair on your body, like, comparing yourself with like blonde,
Yeah.
fairer skinned people, you always just feel like you're less than. And I think it also took me a long time to be able to see that beauty could come in different forms. It didn't have to be that the place that I live, the people that they look, the way that people look there is beautiful, and I'm not because I don't look like that. And that's a battle that I think I'm still trying to overcome today. Like I naturally have curly hair, yet I can't bring myself to embrace that. And I'm straightening my hair because of comments that I've hung on to as a child that people have sort of, said like, oh, you look like Michael Jackson, or, you're like pulling on my hair, like, things like that. And I think those are the sorts of feelings that I maybe can recall as a child more so than maybe in recent years, because I think I'm starting to be able to feel a bit more comfortable in my own skin now, which is a nice place to be.
Of course. And that's like, I've spoken up about stuff like this before, and it just, your story just shows again how bullies and words that people have said, like in the context of bullying, how it can really scar you for life. And these words stick with you like years and like year after year after year. And that's just not fair.
We have to remember that all these experiences have been a source of development. Like, we would probably never think twice about saying something like that to somebody because we just know how it feels to be on the receiving end of that.
Sure.
So we can be a lot more empathetic and sensitive, which I think is great, whether you're a TCK or not. Anybody who's been exposed to bullying, like,
sure,
those hurtful experiences can always be transformed into something that makes you more conscious of, to be aware of with your own words and your own comments about others, so that you don't ever cause that same hurt that you experienced to somebody else.
So then where did this idea for a global nomad come from?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And I think that, like, I feel as though I've always wanted to do something that was creative and of myself, whether that was in the form of, you know, this global nomad or something else. Like, I've always wanted to be creating something. I feel like since I've moved to a city where it may not be as diverse as other places that I've lived in, I feel like I'm more passionate and more kind of, I want to kind of embrace this third culture kid side of myself, because I think that it's something that's almost like a healing journey that I'm going through by meeting other people and finding, you know, experiences that other people can relate to. And I guess because it's such a big part of myself and it's my authentic self to not belong anywhere, I wanted to merge the two together. So to be able to create something that was fun, fashionable. I used to work in the fashion industry, and creative, and something that would also connect people and you know, bring a sense of influence and upliftment to this community. So I just thought that the two would go well, and it's something that I get really excited about, and that's obviously a good sign, isn't it, when you're working on something that makes you happy. So I've created a few slogans like the one you're wearing and the one I'm wearing today, as well as some stickers that, you know, say things like "from everywhere and nowhere," that you can stick on your laptop. I've created a few like little bracelets and necklaces that say "Global Nomad." I'm not a graphic designer by trade whatsoever. I'm just trying to do my best in learning and putting little things that I think are me and hopefully others relate to, and resonate with as well. But yeah, I think like the whole point is, you know, something that's minimalist, because I really like simple things, but I like it to have some sort of meaning or something unique about it. So like, I almost feel like I have a vision where people would wear something from Global Nomad and it would be the perfect conversation starter to be like, oh, like, what is, you know, what does that mean? Or like, you know, then you can talk about your third culture kid element of yourself or whatever it is that you want to share. And yeah, that's kind of the vision behind it.
I love it. I love it because I love that, and I do that. I love having clothes that have a statement, and then people always ask like, okay, what does that mean?
You should check out the website, theglobalnomad.com.
The links will be up and down and everywhere, and so check out the links, and of course check out Nour on Instagram, the Global Nomad.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. So Nour, finally, what is the dream?
Yeah, I think like my dream has always been to obviously have the basics, so health, happiness, and contentment. Like I think those are three things that I would love to always have in my life. And I know that it's difficult because life is so up and down, but I want to be someone who can influence others in a positive way, and let people know that there is more to them than just, you know, there are differences, that actually you can, you know, be yourself and not hide that away. And I think that my dream would be to be someone who can advocate that and influence some of that messaging within the third culture kid community as well.
I never had that growing up, and that's why one of the reasons I felt kind of very alone and felt kind of misplaced. And that's really great, showing people nowadays that you're not alone and you're not the only one going through this. You're not the only one like this. There are so many exotic mixes there, people who have lived everywhere. So it's so nice to grow this community and to join. I mean, otherwise, I don't think we would have ever met.
No.
But Nour, that really, I love what you're doing. I wish you all the best for your business, for your page, for this community, and I can't wait to see it grow. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. I really appreciate your support and all the like positive feedback you've been giving me as well, and for this opportunity to share what I'm doing with everybody. And I think, you know, your initiative has been so great, and it's only going to get better and better as people start to connect and really see how similar we all are.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give us a like. Go follow Nour or whichever side you'll be on. And have a good night. Bye.